Meeting to order. We will start off with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Whoa.
Good evening. This is the Advisory Committee's pre-town meeting for the upcoming special town meeting on October 18th, 2018. That's a Thursday. It's at 7 p.m. at Narragansett Middle School Auditorium. We usually don't have guests, well, too often. Nobody's recording, right? Is anyone recording it? Okay.
TCTV is recording.
Well, besides the man in the closet, Steve.
The man in the closet.
All right.
It's got a name, you know.
All right, this is a public hearing for the advisory committee to make recommendations to town meeting. It's mandated by our bylaw. It has been advertised in the Gardner News, received the invoice for it already, and that'll be on the next agenda. Unless anyone has anything else, I'd entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Any issues? Hearing none. Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Pre-town meeting hearing is now open. I gave everyone a packet. This came from the town administrator. It has several things in it in terms of finance. I think it has an explanation of the free cash stuff, an amendment to the financial policy that might try to explain their breaking up of the free cash and things like that.
Right.
I'll be recording the votes and the recommendations, and I'll cover the minutes. They're pretty kind of self-explanatory. I got a sheet to keep everything going.
Okay.
So, let's see, myself, Deb, Amy, and Mike attended the meeting on Monday. I don't know if you watched it, Tony.
Not yet.
Okay, didn't miss much. It was just a presentation about the warrant, and particularly one article on the stretch building code. So, the first article is the payment of late bills. From the prior fiscal year. So out of this year's budget, the sewer department has a bill of $1,795.97. Cable department, $110.40, and the highway department, $220.80.
So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
In the slides that Carter showed on Monday, it said they're all unbilled by the same vendor. So it's the sewer department, cable department, and highway department are all customers of which vendor?
Greenwood Alarm,
Greenwood Alarm? What do they do?
at least that was the cable bill. They provide the security, call-in service and the security systems.
Okay.
At least we use, and they billed very late, because they had a security breach, believe it or not.
Interesting.
And, yeah, half of that was for FY18,
Yep.
so Kelly said they had to be, done like this at town meeting.
So what, the name again?
It's Greenwood Alarm,
Okay.
and and they're located in Gardner.
So, just so I understand the process, this would normally, you budgeted it in FY '18. You didn't get the bill for it until just recently, or I guess maybe it's not even billed yet. So because of that, you can't go back and since we're past the
They-
date,
if
you
they-
can't spend it, so you have to pay for it out of 19 money?
If they would have encumbered money, put money aside out of their 18 budget, it would be it would be paid out of that, but apparently that did not happen.
No, they're just late bill. It
It
happens.
must be. It's happened
I just
several-
wondered who it
several
was.
years.
No,
Yeah.
I was just kind of curious to the process of,
Yeah.
since it was budgeted in 18.
I
so-
believe that's how it works.
Yeah, so it's sort of free cash, but
So, as to our recommendation,
And they want to pay for it out of OPEX.
Yeah.
I believe that was what was briefed,
why
correct?
is it just coming out of free
Yeah, this
cash?
line says to be paid from fiscal year 19 operating budget.
Yep.
yes.
So there's gonna be deposits anyway, so in terms of like if it's out of whack or something, they're depositing money from free cash into OPEX.
Right, but we're just paying for this out of free cash.
Into OPEB?
No, the OPEX,
Oh, yes.
yep, so,
Hmm.
as far as a recommendation, I mean, obviously they gotta pay the bills,
Right.
Right.
so, I don't
So
think that's an
I would
issue.
look for
If I may, these are all enterprise funds anyway, so I'm accounting for it coming out of the cable enterprise fund.
Oh, okay,
So I'm sure they're gonna take the money from our enterprise funds to pay it.
yeah, were you at the meeting on Monday? Yeah, Carter briefed it a little bit differently, but
That's not what it says here, though.
you have the first right of refusal to pay for those funds out of your operating
If they
budget,
wish
so
to pay
I'm
no
not,
elsewhere, that's fine by me, but
yeah,
I would be surprised if we weren't charged for it.
yeah, I agree with you.
I mean,
I'd keep our
their
eye
town
out.
bills, and I mean, they gotta get paid.
Yep.
I mean,
No, I mean, I realize they have to be paid, but this doesn't say it's coming out of OPEX. It doesn't actually say what the source of this funding is, so I think, like Steve said, I think it's probably right out of their budget.
It's out of
Yeah.
this, yeah, this year's.
I had taken a note because that's what Carter had said.
This is from the meeting
Okay,
on
so-
Monday.
So to me, operating budget and OPEX is different.
Right.
Operating expenses for this year,
Yeah, just,
Yeah,
This-
they would-
yeah.
if they
For
would've
the
signed-
handout
just
from
moved the bill to
Monday
19.
says operating budget on
I
that.
strongly
That's what the
presume they
warrant
will
says.
assign it to the necessary accounts.
yeah,
Agreed.
yeah, I think that's,
I'd be shocked if it were different.
So Jeff, how do you wanna go through these? You need a motion for each article?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see if we're gonna recommend for the article
I got it.
or not. And if we recommend against, then I try to, write down some
Yeah.
I got it.
reasons why.
I'll help you out. So I raise a motion that, under Article 1, late payment of bills, that the advisory committee votes in favor of that action,
Is there a
recommends
second?
that action.
I'll
Is that-
second that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Mike,
Yes,
Tony,
yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and yes. Article 2, this is the one, is to amend the bylaws to adopt the stretch energy building code. This is one of the steps that would help Templeton get designated as a green community. And it automatically enables or allows the town to be eligible for a grant in the amount of $125,000. And then there is as was presented Monday night, there's a per capita formula, and it would bump us up to about $150,000. And I believe that would be like allow the town to do energy efficient things for town buildings and vehicles and things like that. It's, as it was explained, it mainly affects new home construction, and it would increase the cost of building a new house. So,
I mean, do you have a percentage or, yeah, I mean, because I saw the email from a contractor in town,
Yep.
and so,
Yeah, I'm glad
I
we'll
wanna-
talk about that.
I mean, at least address it. I mean, I still believe we have to do what's right for the town. It doesn't really give any facts. It just, he's dealt with the stretch codes. He just doesn't think it's a good fit, but not really why. How much, is it a significant cost to a new home? Is it $100? Is it $1,000?
So they briefed it as, anywhere from, like, I think it was like the $1,600 to $3,000 to get I forget the name of the type of contractor that you would have to bring in additionally to do the blower door test, all these different things, to make sure that the house is meeting the stretch codes,
For energy
threshold for
efficiency.
energy efficiency. So from Mr. Chartier's point of view, the cost-benefit analysis is that you're not getting as a bang for your buck, whereas the builders are the ones holding the bag, trying to, if it's new construction, the burden's on them. If people are choosing where to build things, like when they showed the PowerPoint, and they showed all of the communities, I think it's 270 some odd, it's the majority of Massachusetts communities have already adopted this, exactly, right there. We're not, so we're in a sea of that, in the color chart, it's all orange, and we're still one of the holdouts for the stretch code.
Okay.
And is that, could that help? If we're a community that isn't using that, do builders wind up saying, you know what, let's go there, it's gonna cost us less to build houses or commercial facilities in Templeton?
Yeah, but I mean, if you're only talking, if you're building a new house, you figure you're spending $200,000-300,000. A couple $1,000s shouldn't make a difference.
Right.
and as it was explained was most of the things, I mean, are in the building code already. The biggest thing it does is
It's catching
it
up.
helps designate the town as a green community, and it leads to grants and things like that.
Yeah, like I pulled up a spreadsheet off their website and it shows who's received grants and how much over the last few years. Athol, it looks like they adopted this in 2011 or 2010. So in 2010, they received a grant for $171,000. In July of 13, they got another grant for $232,000. 15, $71,000, and in July of 18, they got another grant for $116,000. So most of them, when you read it, it looks like they're going, like you said, to increase their energy efficiency in buildings, HVAC systems, things like that.
So it's a benefit to the town getting grants, spending less money.
Yeah, that
Huge
was what
benefit
Carter-
where we're
yeah.
using
Okay.
older buildings like this
Sure.
one.
Yep.
We can get rid of those air conditioning units and upgrade the physical plant
Okay.
here, as well as other, the high school would fall into it.
I believe the
Middle school.
upstairs attic of this building still needs to be insulated properly.
Right,
Okay.
Um,
And grant money can be used to do that. Okay.
totally.
It's,
Yeah, they did in Ashburnham.
I mean, it is gonna be a hit to the residents as far as when, you build a new house, but I don't know if a couple $1,000s is
Well,
gonna,
that's,
make
I
or
guess that's
breaks.
kind of my point, is if you're building a new house, that's just factored in before you even start. It's not like it's an after-the-fact bill.
right, when the house is half built and all of a sudden,
And based on the map
Right.
you showed, we're in a minority. I don't think that people are gonna start coming into town, building in this town, because you don't have to do stretch code.
Right, well, because it was explained at the presentation that a lot of the pieces of the stretch code puzzle are becoming standard building practice anyway, because
Okay.
with 241 municipalities agreeing to it, the contractors don't have a real choice to
Okay.
not use it.
The other thing that I like, they talked about on the slide too, is that, while we're not under mass save, they said that the Templeton Light may have rebates that will help cover that cost, that increased cost. And
Mhm.
as well, homeowners are gonna see a reduced energy cost.
Okay.
So,
And it is a one-time fee, it's something that's built
Yeah.
into the cost of your house.
yeah,
They have to have a HERS rating done with the blower door, which is part of it. So you're already adding in that person. It's another person that you have to have on your
Yeah.
contracting team. So
I mean, it just goes into the, when someone's
anywhere
paying
from
that.
$1,000 to $3,000 was the estimated cost, because they get to pick and
Okay.
choose the elements that they wanna use to make that energy rating match what it needs.
Okay, I think I have enough information.
there is you know, a side to be wary of because when they say, you know, free money, there's usually things attached to it somewhere down the line, but, the grant money is attractive, so.
Mhm.
So on Article 2,
So,
to adopt the stretch building code,
I make a motion that the advisory committee recommends adopting the stretch code, stretch energy code.
a motion made, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Deb.
Just looking for his email.
No, it was sent to the
All right, anything
Sent to the
further?
advisory
Yeah,
committee.
yeah.
Just for discussion, I just wanted to review Mr. Chartier's email again. Does anyone know what day that was sent?
Yep, I have it. It was
I saw it
sent
today.
yesterday at 7:14.
Wednesday?
Yep.
Yeah.
Says advisory committee, Templeton one. Oh, good. So the rest of it is-
All right.
The
I think
email.
it was forwarded to us.
No, but if it's, yeah, but when it goes to advisory
Mhm.
committee.
See, I think he's set it up like that.
Did you want me to read it, Mike?
I got it.
Do that.
It says, "I've dealt with the stretch code in several communities. I do not think it would be a good fit for Templeton. I have not heard of what the perceived opportunities are for us." So that's a big acknowledgement. But I do know that every residential construction project will suffer. I mean, every? Well, every new, yeah. Here in Templeton, we are a working class community that works hard for our four walls and a roof. Increasing the cost of construction for the taxpayer long-term does not seem like what is best for us. Many of the stretch requirements, while they're the benefit of the homeowner over a lifetime, is short-term imposed and owner's burden on cost of construction. I understand where he's going. I think that the benefits outweigh, as our discussion is kind of leading, I think the benefits wind up outweighing whatever the sticker shock, I think, may have. Even watching the gentleman's, who was a former selectman, I forget, Belchertown. Just the sticker shock kind of melted away for me for discussing it. But I think it's very valuable to hear from the community. I'm glad that Mr. Chartier sent a note to say this is a concern. And I think that, as long as we have the discussion for it,
Mhm.
I'm pretty comfortable moving forward.
Anything else? All right, on Article 2, to recommend for, Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and yes. Article 3 is one of a couple, 3 of them for
Yeah.
dealing with private ways. Article 3 is to amend the bylaws to the repair of private ways. It wants to see if the town will vote to enact a new section to its bylaws for temporary repairs of private ways. And this has to do with many, it's really come about with about Laurel View. But there are several other,
Yeah, what was the number? Did they say 60?
I thought it was 40.
there's a
You said
lot of them.
40
But
private
there's a
ways.
few major ones, like Laurel View Road, that have, you know, multiple houses. They're not like 2 or 3 homes on them.
Yeah. And I've certainly sat in selectmen's meetings where they've voted, you know, small roads have come to the town and said, hey, we'd like to be a part of your public road list. And they go through that. But I think this is a good effort to basically say, if Deb and I have had this discussion before about Victoria. Victoria was an acceptable road, it met a lot of the conditions. I think those types of roads are easy for the select board to adjudicate, to figure out what to do with them. But when they're not, and you have a Laurel View with the condition, and I've driven through the community, and they certainly got, the road is definitely in poor repair. This is a pretty good effort to try and allow the town to come in and help them.
It outlines more specifically about the options that the town has.
Yeah.
Because there are laws and there have been rulings for using public money to repair private roads. Laurel View has been repaired several times in the past. One specific time, I was a selectman, the fire chief came and asked if there was anything that could be done because they were concerned about being able to get down the road with an ambulance and other private ways, and they have been repaired. Whether it was done technically the legal way or not, but I mean, they're taxpayers in town, they have a
And
right to expect
They don't pay a reduced amount of
taxes
taxes, so-
because, it's just,
Yeah.
so these
This
next
provides some
several,
equity.
it just outlines a way, and it gives town meeting a choice, do you want, do you wanna go? Because there are like 24 taxpayers out there.
Yep.
I mean, like you said, Tony, they don't get a reduced rate because,
Right, and reading this, it seems like the repairs are based on for safety reasons. I mean, if an ambulance went into a pothole or something, and broke an axle or something, it probably costs more to fix that than it would the
the
cost of the
person calling the
repair,
ambulance
so.
doesn't, it's a,
And it's got some checks and balances in it. It's not like they can just call up and say, hey, we got a hole, we need it fixed, there's a process, so.
It outlines it, it's pretty specific. Again, it gives the options in writing, so people at least know that there's a way to get, instead of being in limbo with nothing.
There was, I think there was some language discussing the difference between temporary and permanent repairs. I forget where I saw it, where we
If it's in
discussed
this
that.
one, or
Is
if it's
that
in
the next
one.
article?
Um,
I'm looking at the slides that they gave us, but Article 3 talked about repair of private ways. Article 4, special legislation for a betterment fund allows permanent repairs on private ways. I think
and
that's
then the
the
last
next
one was
Yeah, there's-
for exemptions for
For-
over
yeah.
65, yeah.
Right, and they all work together, so if one passes and the others don't, doesn't it negate that other one? Like, we can't have an article for repair of private ways, change the bylaws that talks about betterment, and then have Article 4, the betterment, not pass. It would have to change the way that bylaw was written, so
They all go
I think they
together.
either all go or none of them go.
Yep, agreed.
So I don't think we have to make a motion, why don't we just discuss them all three of them
Okay.
together? Because to see if there's one
Right.
of them that we have an issue with, that could just negate, like Amy said, negate the process.
That's,
And what I read, it
it's-
didn't.
they're taxpayers, and they deserve to get something for their tax dollars.
I
And
agree,
they're
I mean,
not-
I didn't see anything here when I read these the other day. I didn't see anything in here that made me think that they were getting any special treatment. It's just, like you said, taking care of taxpayers.
The cost would go through that betterment, so it's coming right from the homeowners that live there, right?
It's the similar thing that they do for like sewer, water.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's an improvement, you pay some of it, and it's,
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
so if there's nothing else on 3, I would look for a motion to recommend 4.
I'll make that motion to recommend for Article 3.
I'll second it.
And second was Tony. Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend for Article 3. Is there anything else? Seeing none. Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Yes. Article 4 deals with the filing of special legislation to create a betterment fund. And it mentions Chapter 40, Section 6N, which is a general law that already gives towns the means to do what they want to do for private roads and pay for it through it like a betterment fund. And this is gonna create that fund, where the money is supposed to be set aside in a special account fund overseen by the treasurer, and it would deal with the private road stuff, the betterment funds for when repairs are made on the private roads. Again, as Tony, I've read through these and I don't see anything really. It's helping out taxpayers who are they're in a fix, and
I found it, okay.
you're
They are.
supposed to try to help people. I mean, my road that I live on is probably, as bad or worse than these roads, but I don't want some group of taxpayers not to have access to get their roads fixed the same as mine or anybody else's road.
So, earlier when I was talking about the difference between temporary and permanent, so Article 3 talks about temporary repairs of private ways, right?
Mhm.
Article 4, Section 1, and then appears again in Section 2. Notwithstanding Section 6N of Chapter 40 of the general laws or any other general or special law to the contrary, the town of Templeton may make permanent repairs to private ways and other water, sewer, road, and sidewalk betterments within its corporate and municipal limits, including improvements to grading, drainage, paving, resurfacing, and to adopt bylaws to carry out provisions of this act. Section 2, same thing. Such sums may be necessary for the purpose of making such permanent repairs to private ways within the town. Is it an issue to have the disparity between Article 3 and Article 4? I'm not arguing against it, I'm just saying,
I mean, between a.
is it apples and
permanent-
oranges?
Between a permanent and a temporary?
Right, so Article 3 allows for the repair of private ways, and it specifically says it's entitled Temporary Repairs of Private Ways.
And I think
But it doesn't talk about permanent repairs. Is it?
Right,
am I
because
split-
I think that's what Article 4
Four
is
does.
for. That's why I was talking about the 3 of them. Carter referenced a 3-legged stool.
Okay.
We can't have Article 3 pass and then Article 4 not pass, and then Article 5 pass, because they won't make sense standing alone.
Yeah,
In my opinion, these 3 articles either all go or all don't go.
I agree,
So
that's
the
not my
exam-
issue, it's
an
the
example,
language.
right.
If they send this
No.
and gets codified in the bylaws and it's got faults in it, that's the only thing I'm raising.
No, I
The
think,
example I would use is in the wintertime, for whatever reason, a big pothole comes up, and they go do a temporary fix on that, so anyone's plows or whatever
So
can
it's
get over it, and then it
normal.
may need later on a more permanent fix, and I think that's what Article 4
okay.
covers.
They wanna create, this is gonna create the fund, sorta like
Okay.
creating like revolving funds and things like
Right.
that, town meeting votes on it. So they have some place to put the money should, you know, the people go that way. Again, this is, you know, government at
So,
work.
I
Right.
guess, one thing I would ask, does this force people who live on a private way to contribute into this fund?
Kinda talked about that, and it was going to be like if there's 20 people,
Yeah.
I think it had to be like a supermajority, so.
Yep,
sorta
so,
like a-
section 5 of Article 3, any such repairs may be made only after a petition of 2/3 of the property owners on parcels having frontage upon the way to be repaired is submitted to the Board of Selectmen on a form provided by the town.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, if, can you force someone to pay for something if they don't want to? Without.
Well, I mean, I
You
think,
can already do
without
that with
hearing.
taxes.
Right, I
Without
think-
hearing, I mean, if it's just something that's coming out of their taxes, you know, but,
no, I think this is separate because, so Article 3's allowed us to do an emergency repair
Right.
for whatever needs they might have, and then that community, so just to take an example, the community, the residents of Laurel View would then come together to discuss, do we want to have our road permanently repaired through the betterment? Because that's what the
Okay.
process is for. They can appeal, let's say they don't,
okay.
then they would appeal to the Board of Selectmen and say,
So-
no, we don't want you guys to repair the road
So
out of this.
where do the funds come from for the betterment? From the residents?
From the residents that
Yes.
pay those fees. One benefit that won't, or an argument that could be made for it, I suppose, is by paying the betterments and improving the road, you could get it to the point where the town as a whole would accept it as a public way.
Yeah.
And then it'll just be,
Right.
well, it'll be put on a list to be repaired like the rest of the roads.
Right?
I think that's the key to understanding it,
Okay,
Jeff.
so,
Thanks
but
for
this was
explaining it that
submitted by
way.
the Board of Selectmen. okay.
Yes.
So it wasn't submitted by,
No.
This, I think, to
No,
me,
this
this
was-
just spells out a formal way to get the residents to do what they perhaps, they seem to be pretty much on board together. I've been to a few of the hearings.
okay.
That, you know, they're a group on Laurel View that want this done. But maybe in another neighborhood or a different road, it might, this passage of this may kind of like force them to come to agreement that if we're ever gonna get out of this, classification as, you know, a private road and we're not, and we have to fight to get something done for our road, this kind of gives them a way and kind of maybe forces them a little bit to pay a little bit to get their road to the point where the town would say, hey, we'll accept
Okay.
that, and then it just would be handled like the rest of the roads through taxes.
So it's really not any town, other town people that don't live on it, their money. So, and then they all have to
Yeah.
get together, essentially 2/3,
Right,
okay.
I think it just
Right.
kind of,
Right, I
like I
just
said, I
wanna make
think
sure
it
I had
kind
all the
of channels
facts.
them to come to the realization, hey, if we want to end this private road thing and be a public way for the
Right.
town.
Yep.
So the town as a whole would be responsible instead of us having to deal with it separately.
Right.
Yes, did you have?
Okay,
I just wanted to comment that, yes, people can be forced to pay for a betterment. For instance, when the sewer line went down Baldwinville Road,
Right.
everyone had to pay the betterment of it going by their house. They didn't have to hook up, but we all had to pay for the betterment of it going down the road.
Right, and if they
So-
sold the house, then they sold the house with the betterment attached to it.
Right,
And
or you
it-
could
Okay.
pay the betterment in full
Right.
on your own.
and that was only for
Right up
people on
front.
Baldwinville Road?
Oh, I can't
Or was that
remember
the whole
exactly
town?
where the
Oh, no,
sewer
no,
went.
yeah, just where the work is being done.
Okay.
Right, just where the
Sewer
work was
betterments are
being
pretty
done.
common.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Because
Yeah, we
it
paid it
gives
when we
you
did.
access to towns, like when you sell your house, you can always say, hey, you have towns, in case somebody, that's their breaking
Right,
point.
I don't have
Right,
to be
right.
Title V.
I don't wanna
because
buy it
I'm
because it doesn't
on
have
city
town
sewer.
sewer, well,
Yeah.
you can hook up to it, so.
Okay.
it's-
Alright. I
It's
think I have
just-
enough
I
information.
guess my only issue was just the difference between the language, I fully support all three of them together, and I think they did a really good job proposing this for them. I just wanna make sure the language is right.
Right. To get to the point to the,
Yeah,
from temporary to permanent repairs, like I said, it's just creating a place for that money to be set. It's
Mhm.
one of the things of municipal government that is just, they make it hard.
yep.
Cause temporary repairs would come out of like a highway emergency budget or
Yeah.
something, right? So if they have
Yes,
to, quick throw some cold patch on it.
right, they
Yeah.
just.
Okay.
And that's
the
what
same
they've
stuff
been
that they
doing.
use on any road.
Right.
That's what's been done in the past, just to make the road kind of more passable for emergency vehicles and for the citizens. But this will allow a place, like I said, a place for the money to go if they choose that way. And that money can then be used to do, like if they have to redo the drainage properly or redo basins, this is where that money would, or some of that money would come from. So,
I just think the language is wrong.
so unless there's
But I
there.
support it. We're in discussion, right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
yep.
Is there any other concerns with 4?
Can you put your finger on a spot that bothers you, Mike?
Well, so, I definitely don't wanna beat the dead horse, cause we're only on Article 3, but, so, Article 3 says to see if the town will enact a new section, blah, 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 to be entitled temporary repairs of private ways, but they're intended to be permanent repairs, right?
Not at this point, no.
All right, so, then Article 4 is calling for permanent repairs to private ways.
Right.
So if we're, Article 3 is correct in saying they're temporary repairs to support the Article 4, which is to make sure the public necessity of access to residents, school busing, EMS, fire. Then Article 4 should say, notwithstanding, to make temporary repairs to private ways and other water, sewer, water, and sidewalk. And then again in Section 2, such sums may be necessary for the purpose of making such temporary repairs to private ways within the town. No?
No. That's not my understanding of it. My understanding of it is that,
I'll yield then.
Article 3 is for the emergency things.
Yes.
It's changing the bylaws to allow the town to just come in and be like, there's a
Yep.
huge problem,
Got it.
sinkhole. And then Article 4, the community, whatever road it is, whatever private way, would have to come together again and go back to the Board of Selectmen. So it's like a two-step process.
And
So
they
the
would put money
first
into
step
the
would
fund.
be, right, the first step would be temporary repair. The second step is Article 4, which is permanent repair. And it's just another set of processes for the people on the private way to then receive permanent repair. And I think in my opinion, it implies that there'll be some say or some sort of control over the permanent repairs. If there needs to be a grading change or structural change or things that are gonna cost, an exorbitant fee, I think that the community then, that is a direct beneficiary of it, would get to have a little bit of control, at least in the way of speaking with the Board of Selectmen and putting it forward to them. So temporary repairs, Article 4 would be the permanent repair, so then this fund has to be created.
To me, my greater concern about this is not the language of temporary versus thinking. It's when money starts accumulating in that fund and it gets large, that it doesn't get borrowed or used, which has happened, and not only in Templeton, but, for other things.
Because it becomes attractive.
And then, well, we'll put it back, but no, it can't be, that's my biggest concern is when it gets going, that it's not, you don't transfer money out of it to use for this or that.
I'm good, I got nothing
But
further.
again, it's the process of, government to create the fund, so there's a place for this money to go and to provide, outlines the uses for that money, once that fund is created, if it is created, and money gets put in there. This just tells you how, what it'll be how and what it would be spent on. Versus just a bylaw that says we can go in and we can coal patch private ways. You know,
Right.
we can officially do that, and we can officially do this, and we can officially do this. We can't go in there and dig up your drain and replace it, but we can make the surface, this better, blah, blah, blah.
Okay,
So,
good.
so, anything else on Article 4? Then I would look for a motion for recommend 4.
But we had that.
No, I'll make
Got it.
make a motion to recommend for Article 4.
In a second?
I'll second.
All right, on a motion and a second to recommend for Article 4. Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Article 5 is to adopt Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 80, subsection 13B, to defer the repayment of certain betterment liens. It was talked about some conditions where people over the age of 65 may defer the betterment charges until they are either able or choose to pay the betterment off, or when they sell their property, and that would be involved, when they sell the house, that whatever money you get from selling the house, you pay off the betterment first.
And this is really designed to help people on fixed incomes. Yep, got it.
So,
I forward a motion
I'm not
to,
ready.
for the advisory committee to recommend for Article 5.
motion by Mike,
Second.
second Tony?
Yep.
Yes, 16. All right, no other discussion. All right, on the motion, Mike,
Yes?
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Yes. We got 11 more to go. We're having fun now. Article 6 is to amend the bylaws for employment contracts for all department heads. See if the town will vote to enact section 53, I think, of its bylaws to be entitled Employment Contracts and read as follows: the town administrator may negotiate and execute an employment contract for a period of time not to exceed 3 years to provide for the performance standards, salary, fringe benefits, and other conditions of employment, including but not limited to severance pay, relocation expenses, reimbursement for expenses incurred in the performance of duties of office, liability insurance, performance standards, and leave for all department heads. Such employment contracts shall be subject to Board of Selectmen action and shall prevail over any conflicting provisions of any town personnel bylaw, rule, or regulation. There was mention that they would still be at will. This just gives guidelines. Like right now, if you look on the town website, there's no employment contract. There's one for the treasurer collector, the town administrator, fire chief, police chief, but there's none for the town accountant. Why, I don't know, but,
So the Board of Selectmen are still in the loop,
yes.
as long as there's a check and a balance, I'm good.
The only check and balance that we really don't have is we really don't have a separate human resources person to go talk to, because right now that falls on the town administrator,
Right,
but
we're-
it's the
our
one who does.
assumption that he is actually doing,
Yeah, but when somebody's doing the hiring and firing and you're gonna go talk to them about a complaint, it may very well be him or his one of his members, Board of Selectmen or something, and that's the hiccup I think that the town has right now with regards to employment, where there's no real like confidential or independent place where employees can go to check on things without talking to the person who's doing the hiring and firing.
That's a good point.
It seemed like they were pursuing that a year or two ago rather strongly, and then it's, as many things,
So
it went by the
Who
wayside. and
negotiates
it
these
doesn't-
contracts now?
Is that, who approves them?
Yeah, there's not, like for the DPW head, if there's a DPW head, how is it negotiated?
Isn't there no
It
contract?
starts with the town administrator and ultimately it gets approved by the Board of Selectmen. They have the final vote. That's per statute,
So
per
does this
town
just put all
bylaws.
department heads under a contract vehicle, so to speak?
It would just give them written guidance as to more, more in writing of what their rights are and, what has to happen for them, to be fired, and can they put severance pay, this, that, in there? Because right now, it's just it's generalized in the personnel policy, but again, I don't even know if all department heads want to go this way or not. So,
Does
That's a good point that you made. I mean, this doesn't have, is that a concern to have like department heads be a part of the process? If it's the TA doing the negotiation and execution of the contracts? There's only a few from what you're saying, right?
well, right now, I look on.
Employment contracts.
Yeah, that
Who
are
falls
under
under that?
contracts. There's, the town administrator has one.
Yep.
The treasurer collector,
Mm-hmm.
fire chief, police chief, then there's the union
Does-
contract.
Does the town administrator have hiring, firing authority over those contracts?
The ultimate authority lies with the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
I mean, he can recommend firing and,
Right.
go bring it to the board, but
Okay.
the board has the ultimate.
And the reason I ask that is because, for example, I know for the police department, the town administrator negotiates with the union, okay? And so if the chief is advocating, if they're at odds, I don't wanna see some type of personal, he recommend, well, I can't work with this guy, he's gotta go or something.
Again, though, the chief's contract, that ultimately comes down to Board of Selectmen.
Right.
I mean,
Well, I mean, if you have something like that, I think you set yourself up for some legal, but,
again, the biggest thing I think that the town, lacking is a human resources place to go, where you may have a little bit, I mean, human resource director would still be a town employee, and may start.
Right.
with
It is the
board
TA,
stuff,
right.
But it at least gives the, place to go, without speaking perhaps directly
To
to.
the hiring, firing authority.
But, like I said, that was a big thing that they were talking about, position they actually created, had somebody in there part-time for a while, and then the person left, and it never really has been, that's a position that's never really.
Yeah.
what was said at the meeting Monday about this?
One thing was they would still be at will. They mentioned the people that are under contract already. And again, it would just give like written guidance, so to speak, about the conditions of firing and what have to take place for, and evaluation things and stuff like that.
It seemed to me that the town administrator felt as if this was a better way to move forward when you're looking to hire people, to say that you're then under contract. Because even though they're contracted at will, if everything goes great, they have a 3-year commitment from this town saying your job is here, this is what, if you hold up
Right.
your end of the bargain, we'll hold up our end of the bargain.
Yeah, it's.
That's a great point.
It was mentioned as a recruiting tool, and whether, I don't know what, professionals, look for these days or not. If
Right.
it's, or if, other towns have it and you don't have it, if you take that as a perceived hit, so to speak, that, they'll avoid, you because, oh, you don't have this in writing. They do, so maybe for some, that's the tipping point, they go there with A rather than B, if you have.
Yeah, I do feel like that was sort of the implication, but it was
So-
certainly not said directly.
That's a good point, though.
It's-
And they just want to add this on, the language is a little odd there, to enact a section LV III. I mean, I assume that they mean to enact an article to the general bylaws.
It's probably a section on the
If
general.
if they follow the memorandum part, the rewrite of in the codification of the bylaws. it
What
would be
year
an
am I
article,
looking at?
but,
I'm looking at,
Since that hasn't been enacted, now this would be in a section.
right, an article. So like Article LV is sex offender residency restrictions. So if I'm looking at a somewhat dated one, then this would be Article LV III. Again, not really a big deal, but it's,
Stay consistent.
yeah, it says section. It's not a section, it's an article.
Yeah, and if it's supposed to be an article, a motion could be made to change the
Yeah,
language at the meeting.
that's what I thought. It doesn't have a year on, I think I'm looking at the bylaw book, with the table and the cover. I think that was from 2015,
Yeah.
because there's a couple different versions that are floating around. I know codification and others. I just wanted to make the point that it was written a little bit odd. I think we're all feeling it, but it basically is getting tacked on to the end of the bylaws to say, hey, this is how the town administrator is gonna execute employment contracts. And the Board of Selectmen are gonna say yes or no.
Yeah, I believe there's still a thing in our bylaws that a bylaw book is supposed to be printed, updated every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
They started more online, posting them online quicker, even though once in a while, there's a bylaw that's voted or a change that's voted at town meeting, and it doesn't make it there,
Yeah.
as quick as you would think. I mean, electronically, it just,
Yeah. Actually, if I go to the website, our website has the bylaws updated as of the 12th of last month, updated 9/12/2018. And in the index of that, the last article in there is concerning the Veterans Advisory Board, and that is Article LVI.
But that's because
the.
they're going in order,
Yep.
so
Okay.
this article.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Betterment, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that, those other
Okay.
articles.
So I think it's just, it should say article versus section.
Correct.
Yeah,
I forward a motion to recommend for Article 6.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, is there anything else, any more concerns? On the motion to recommend for Article 6, Mike,
Yes?
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Yes. Article 7 is to amend the bylaws about animal control. Apparently, a lot of this stuff is out of date, and they want to delete the current bylaw article and replace it. basically following Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Sections 136A through 174E. And a few of those sections in between those two have been repealed, are no longer in existence. The only thing that caught my eye on here, that I don't know, it may increase the cost of a license, whether they mean the license is the paper portion or the tag itself. But section 145 says every license issued to the owner of a dog shall have a description of the rabies printed thereon. And a description will be provided by the public Board of Health.
That you had to have
Where's
that.
that?
If it's just on the paper license, I guess that really wouldn't increase the cost, but if it's on the license itself, currently there's nothing on there. If they gotta print that on that little metal, on the
No,
license
you have to get
itself.
a separate tag from your vet
Right,
that says when and where you
but
got that rabies.
this references the dog license issued by the town. It's, I don't know, maybe it causes them to go up a buck, or if their interpretation is the license is the paper copy that comes with your dog license, versus the rabies tag that you get from your vet.
Well, I had to submit proof of rabies every year when my dogs get their licenses. I submit proof of rabies and she
Yeah.
keeps that proof.
Right.
So I don't know if they're just changing their form.
Right, I don't know if they're gonna interpret the license as the paper copy that comes with
Mhm.
your dog, your town-issued dog tag, but, other than that, I read through the law and I didn't see really anything,
Well, it's doubling the fee to license a pet.
so.
So we don't currently have an animal control officer in town?
We do, we
Can we share?
share with Winchendon.
So, okay, so this says the Board of Selectmen shall appoint an animal control officer pursuant to chapter 140. I'm looking at section 7.
And they do that, now as,
Well, I understand that, but is the intent to share, continue to share, or do they want one separate for the town?
Yeah, I'm not sure how long that agreement with Winchendon is for, if it's multi-year, if it's year to year. For instance, we shared with Gardner on a year to year, and 1 year we did it, and then the next year the town voted not to. Part of the reason, I think, was the increase in cost, and then they went to Winchendon.
Is the cost of an animal control officer already in the budget?
That I don't know.
What are we, somewhere, it's in, the animal control is included, and that's in the police budget. I believe it would be under,
They're
it's,
down,
be under
they're
several
down an
things,
officer.
personnel
They're
and
not gonna have an animal control if they're borrowing it.
Well, I mean, what happens
employee
is,
support
A,
and services,
if we-
it's
we're still splitting with Winchendon Grade. and
That's
then
why
we
they-
pay half of it, but is it in the budget, or?
not format, it's
or
not
else
clear.
We're gonna be on the hook for $50,000.
Format is very vague.
What would
As
that
far
have
as
to-
trying to
what would that
track,
have to do with
trying
this
to track
bylaw?
money, it's funds, it's very hard. I mean, you can look at
I'm looking at the
detail,
old one versus the
Article
new
se-
one.
Article
I mean,
seven. You'll get the
this is primarily dealing with,
we'll have it broken down in it, but
No, but Article
Licenses.
seven, Animal control
Month to
officer,
month.
section 7.
Very vague.
Does
very
the-
vague,
the
it's
town
hard
will
to-
appoint?
hard to
That's what,
track.
you know,
I say, I went through the Mass General Law online to see if there was anything funny in there, and
that's
I
a
did.
good point, so.
So here's my concern, Jeff. Because it doesn't necessarily state that, and maybe it wouldn't be in the bylaws, it's more of an agreement. if we're splitting one with Winchendon, and I'm just gonna make the number up, and the salary's 50,000, and we contribute half, or whatever our fair share would be, great. And if that's in the budget, that's great, but if they all of a sudden now we're gonna have our own separate one, is the salary for that person in the budget? Because it would be a solely, a town, bill solely, not split. Or is this just the way the bylaw reads?
This is, they're proposing the bylaw to read this way.
What does the
But
current one say? about
dog,
animal control
As
officer?
far as I
It doesn't.
know.
There is no mention, they say dog officer in the current bylaws.
Again, I don't think that the sharing has ever been addressed in the bylaw, you know.
Well, and I don't think it would, I mean, because because that can be a year, like you said, a year-by-year agreement that,
But for any dog that's licensed or housed in Templeton, if there's an issue with it, you're gonna have a hearing before the selectmen. And that's per mass law, this mass general law.
okay.
And if the last dog hearing I went to, there was actually, a dog officer wasn't there, the animal control officer wasn't there, there was a police officer in there, and who responded to the call between the two parties with the issue with the
Yeah.
dogs.
So can you to satisfy section 7 of the proposed bylaw, can there be an appointee, does it talk about that? Like a police officer acting in behalf, like an additional duty? Or if there's, a so-named share, municipal share? Because this is the first time it says the Board of Selectmen shall appoint an animal control officer. The old discuss an animal control officer being the person that actually does impounding or notice to owner and redemption. But this is the first time they've talked about that duty and where it comes from. And it's good. I think it's well-written.
Mhm.
It says, animal control officer shall keep accurate, detailed records of confinement. Do they use a HIMSA? Does the police department, if there's like an animal issue and Winchendon's not available, do they use a HIMSA to?
I think so, cause it's up behind the town barn.
Right,
I
Yeah,
think so.
I mean,
sometimes,
as a rescue type, or a holding if they find a stray or something?
yeah.
Yeah.
Restraining of dogs. This is dog control, and I think a HIMSA winds up helping out with that.
sometimes,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
I just wanted to say that Monday night, when they discussed this, that Mr. Terenzini said that this complete article was written by town council.
yeah, and it pretty much follows the mass general law. I went through reading it today.
Okay, I just wanna make sure, I think there's some things that the town is already doing, and that
Yeah.
they're updating the bylaws to kind of reflect what we're doing, and I'm okay with that, I just wanna make sure that all of a sudden, we don't get a $40,000 bill for an animal control officer, that wasn't budgeted for based on this.
Yeah,
Or
this is
whatever
the
the number would
promise
be.
to have one, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
it's-
and if their strategy is, no, this is if we need one, if we can't have a working agreement with another town, this is the authority, because I guess every town needs one, so.
And for instance, like now, under this agreement, the truck used is a Templeton truck. It was bought by Templeton a few years back. The building where, if they collect the dog, where they go is in Winchington. It's actually kind of deplorable conditions. But that's the decision that was made.
I think I have enough.
Okay.
And if that agreement was to break, then, we would be funding an officer all by themselves, but. So,
Well, at $20 per dog, that's not spayed, it's a license. And if they actually followed up on the violation for not picking up your poop and taking it with you. Cause it says you can't put it in a town trash receptacle, you gotta pick it up and take it with you. Throw it away at your own house. And the violation for that is, you know, clearly enumerated here. Those things together could probably pay for an animal control officer.
I wanna know who picks up the squirrel poop.
I mean, I don't know, are those town squirrels? Do they pay taxes?
They're on town property, somebody should be picking them.
I don't know.
Are they on a private way?
What about the bunnies?
There are a lot of bunnies.
A lot of bunnies. All right, I make a
Okay.
motion to, recommend for Article 7.
Second?
Second,
Yes.
Mike. 19. All right. Any further? Okay, on the motion for Article 7 to recommend for Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Yes. Alright.
It's $12. I just wanna make a motion in favor.
Article 8. Dial-a-ride promotion, to see if town will vote to appropriate the sum of $12.30 to an account entitled Dial-a-Ride, and to meet said appropriation by a transfer from the revenues received from the Transportation Network Community Fee Assessment. Don't take any other action there too. Apparently with
Uber.
Uber,
And
yeah. I use that. They have
You
to
use
pay,
it?
they have to pay a certain amount to each town, and $12.30 is the estimated revenue that Templeton will be reaping from
10 cents a rider.
those, those share rides.
I make a motion to vote in favor.
Myself, I think it's gonna cost more than $12.30 to process that, but, you know.
I'll stand-
I guess every nickel
You
that
will.
goes
I'll
in the
sta- I made a
Templeton
motion,
jar is.
yeah.
I'll
worth-
second that motion. I'm curious, does it
And
happen?
the motion was
To
by
vote in favor.
Tony?
And seconded. I'm curious, does the Uber and Lyft surcharge or whatever, does that occur by when it actually occurs in Templeton? Or is this like the state collects it from them and then they give it to the communities? How do they assess that? Like, I think I downloaded Uber once and it has like a map of where the Uber drivers are. And there was like one lonely dude
I think he's on my street.
traveling, I think, in Fitchburg. I don't know how prevalent it is now, but like, is there a lot of Uber and Lyft going on in our area?
I don't know about here in town, but for sure in the Gardner, Leominster, Fitchburg area, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Because the kids use it. So, my daughter had a friend at school that was using Uber to get back and forth to school. His parents had to work. They gave him an account. Their card was attached to it. He could only use it for
Yeah.
Uber. So if he had anywhere to go, he'd
Right.
get his phone and get an Uber right to Gardner. So for sure they're using it around here.
Yeah, it's amazing how
Yeah.
much people
So
use it.
that's the income that we're tapping into when it occurs locally.
Yes, and it says here that it's assessed 10 cents per rider. So if somebody gets dropped off in Templeton, we get 10 cents.
10 cent, wow.
Or I guess
Teacher
imagine
says every
picked
time
up,
a bell
who they get
rings.
picked up. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's where you come from or where you're going, or maybe both. You're right.
You
I
cross
love it.
Templeton, you get 10 cents. That's the toll that
That's
we collect
progress
for
right
coming into
there.
town,
Do you get-
10
is there
cents.
origination and
You can stand right
destination?
there.
I don't know if, it doesn't say if it's origination or destination, but that would be, I mean, sort of interesting to note, but.
Anyway,
Says we're not progressive.
the town coffers will increase by $12.30 yearly.
Well, and they have to use it Carter said they have to use it for something about promoting transportation.
Yeah, it's.
So they've gotta use it for like a bike path or something.
Must be spent on non-traditional transportation, for example, bus, bike path, ride sharing.
Right.
It's one of
So he
those-
said they were gonna make flyers or brochures, and I was like, that's gonna cost more than $12.
We'll only get
If
to
it costs 20, at least
Make four of
12.30 of it
them.
will be paid for out of, it's, like I said, it probably costs more to process it than it.
Totally.
No, so maybe this is a surprise, source of revenue in the future,
Maybe
maybe.
We'll encourage people to use Uber.
10 cents a rider.
Maybe someday Templeton will hit $100.
Right?
There you go.
We'll be on the big
That
time.
would be our goal.
Facebook worthy.
Anything else on Article 8? No. On the motion to recommend for, Mike,
Yep.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Article 9 is Stonebridge Road Study, sometimes called Stony Bridge by some. To see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $50,000 and no cents to pay the cost of field data collection and recommended replacement structure study, and to meet said appropriation by a transfer of said sum from certified free cash or program funds of the Community Preservation Act or any combination thereof. And I believe one of the reasons why you have to do this study is if you go for any type of grants, you have to do these,
Right.
you gotta spend money to collect some free money.
I think that they're trying to make it like a historical bridge and something, and so
So
they
that
wanted to do that.
If CPC will go with that, and then the historical commission, and then they can justify using CPC money
Right.
if they vote to use it.
I forward a motion to recommend for the Stonebridge Road Study.
Motion made, is there a second?
Second.
Anything further? Anybody have anything on Article 9?
No, they said that they wouldn't know until October 11th, if the CPC was
See,
even gonna have money to get for
Okay.
this.
And it
So
would
that explains that.
disclose that at town meeting, which would give a little more information to.
Right.
And if they go that route, then it will probably, I think, would be best, but. On the motion, Article 9 to recommend for. Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and yes. All right. Made it to Article 10, we're over halfway. This is the fiscal 2019 Cable Department Operating Budget Supplement. Them rascals want some more money. Everybody looking for the dollars. To see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $55,000 to increase the fiscal year 2019 Cable Department budget by said sum in total and aggregate the sum of $128,000, $177. That should be $128,077, I believe. Yes, that's what the dollar.
Yep.
That's, and to meet said appropriation from the receipts and revenues to be collected on the behalf of the cable department for said fiscal year. And I believe, since he's sitting at the table, we have Mr.
Nice, Steve.
Steve Castle here to justify this. Steve?
Well, our original budget for the fiscal year was set at 73,177, I believe. Our revenues for this year are going to be approximately 150,000. And we are trying to put in place some structure so that we can build to be self-sustaining in the future. We receive our money via the cable company that charges user fees so that people in Templeton can have a TV station. We renegotiated a contract that we finalized in 2017 with Comcast, the cable provider, to provide more of a percentage of their money. We can take up to 5% of TV revenues that they earn in Templeton. And we are taking 4.25% right now. So the idea of this isn't just to bring it up to revenue projections, but to really put in place a bigger staff so that Sean and I don't have to do all the work, and we can have a station manager, hopefully, who can run the day-to-day. I can be more of a director and go out and solicit sponsorships, which we're going to need to sustain ourselves in the future, because this money, by all indications, is apt to dry up as people get off of cable, and also as the cable companies try to reclassify what's video on demand and what's TV revenue and internet revenue. They don't want to be providing this money. So we know in the future, we have to go out and get sponsorships, and we have to build a staff to do that. So that's what this does. It puts these pieces in place. We would have a station manager, maybe even a shared position with the school if they want to play, and a couple part-time, hopefully college students, like Sean, who does a great job, by the way.
Absolutely.
On keeping up with all the meetings and saves me a ton of work. And the idea is really to provide opportunities for young people and others who want careers in media, and even provide scholarships for that. So we have a couple interns working at the high school. What we want to do is have a program where we're feeding those students into Mount Wachusett Community College and other colleges, and hopefully they come back and work a summer. And we cover all the festivals and so forth. We're way behind on production. I've got hours of video of the Arts and Crafts Festival and the musical acts and everything that I can't get to, and they should be, we want students to be able to do this, get real-world experience, get scholarships, letters of recommendation, and so forth. So that's it in the nutshell. I know it's kind of a
So
complicated
that's
subject.
why my internet bill went up. Okay.
I got news for you. Always gonna go up.
No, it's all cable's fault. No, and people do like, I speak to people and I'll watch a lot of meetings myself. It saves me from, and sometimes there's 3 meetings going on at the same time and you can't be there, so, and I know a lot of people watch it. They don't come here, but they will stop you and ask you questions, and hey, the other night, why did you guys do this, and what about, I mean, they watch, and I think people like it.
And when we miss a meeting, I hear it. If
Yes,
something didn't get taped.
why was
for
that
any
recorded?
reason,
What,
or if it
what's
got-
going on?
If it got stuck loading up to YouTube, and, so we're also putting all the meetings and the other things we cover on Channel 8, on cable, but also it's going out on YouTube, and we share it on Facebook. And by
Yeah.
the way, I just posted something on Facebook to ask if it's Stone Bridge or Stony Bridge, and I encourage you all to go there and debate. Trying to tap into the
It's a
into the
bridge
controversy.
built with stone, okay? I know, I think
Which
I think
Facebook
at Monday's
account?
night meeting, it was,
Which Facebook account?
It's
Town?
the TCTV
Oh,
Facebook
you- oh, I
page.
didn't know
So we have our own page.
And now you don't
Encourage you to
have to-
like and follow us and
and
share.
with the YouTube, you don't have to wait, you don't have to buy a CD anymore, or DVD, or whatever the heck they call them. And you don't have to wait, watch Channel 8, look for the schedule. Like, you can go home,
Right.
a lot of times that same night, you can watch that meeting, or certainly the next night, which is, like I said, it's good, and I know people watch them, and they like it.
Thank
So
you.
it's, maybe someday Templeton will have their own cable TV, and we can say bye-bye to Comcast, and we'll be our own supporting. I know the
Maybe.
town of Greenfield does it,
Yeah.
so.
First, he needs this money.
uh,
Right. Steve, what did you
What is
say
the
your,
total?
you said it was 73 was your set. What were revenues estimated at?
150.
150, all right, I heard you
It
right.
should stabilize after that, estimated by what we're getting right now in quarterly, to about 128, which is where the town administrator set the budget. This year, we're gonna get about 150 because they were late on a payment that got assigned to FY '19. So we'll pick up an extra 30,000 this year. We lost it from last year. And then whatever you don't use goes into what they call retained earnings from the enterprise account.
Yep,
And that needs to be certified by the state. Right now, we've got in excess of 175,000 in that, so that's sort of a savings, and that I use to plan our capital, 5-year capital plan, and the select board already has that, as well as job descriptions for what we would need
okay.
to do this. So we won't spend this much this year, because we're probably not gonna hire a station manager until next year, but it may be May. And I said, I can't wait for June, or
Right.
July to start a new fiscal year. And hopefully, I would like to get part-time college help, to help Sean and I by January if possible. And then some seasonal people in the summer. So that's where most of the money would go to. And we also put in $10,000 for Scout Hall, which the town is renovating on the CPA funds, but we're looking to do a kind of a casual counter camera system, so if any of you want your own show, come see me. And you could have a little talk show, and it could be taped right there without having a full-service studio. But we're gonna have to pay for cabinetry and storage for our gear as well. We have a couple closets in town, that's about it.
Keep Sean in the closet all the time.
Yeah, and that's, the floor is slanted, it's not a great space, and our other closet's in back of the old food pantry light barn, so.
Oh, yeah.
That's no picnic either. In there, so Scout Hall would be a great addition as well.
Maybe you can buy the building next door, so you'll have a lot of parking and stuff.
I'm tempted.
That'd be something,
Mr.
having
Chair.
it in an old church.
Mhm.
So excess enterprise funds certified by the state, how does that come back to the town? Is it captured within the community television enterprise fund?
It'd be classified
Like
as.
their own
as
free cash?
Yes, it's retained earnings, but it has to be certified, and it can't be, spent until it is done. It's similar like the sewer has it, the water department has it, any enterprise fund
Okay.
has it, and it's,
And like Steve, like you were saying, Steve, you're basically rolling that into your capital expense plan.
Yes, I kind of view the retained earnings as a savings account.
Got it?
For capital. So next year, I will sit here, hopefully not to get a reappropriation, but for the May town meeting, for the budget, and I'll probably ask for about $8,000 in operating expenses, and on top of that, because we have capital expenses coming up, we're gonna need a new broadcast server. They cost anywhere from $30,000 to $70,000.
Yeah.
And that will come from the retained earnings. So as long as our retained earnings, from what I understand from the state, as long as that's certified, I can't get it through the budget, but we can get it at town meeting.
So as of right now, it sounds like you're pretty self-sufficient.
Yes, we've never
Yeah.
used, raised tax
tax
money
money.
for the town.
Yeah, I can see some of the stuff that you're getting from capital planning, your live feed equipment, studio equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So he's already executing his capital plan anyway,
Okay.
so that's good, thank you.
You're welcome.
anything further?
I don't have any more questions, but I'll forward a motion for the advisory committee to recommend for Article 10.
I'll second.
And thank you for coming in to explain that, I really appreciate that.
It's my pleasure.
On the motion for Article 10 to recommend for. Mike,
Yes,
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb?
Yes,
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming and making your case.
Yeah, it makes it easier when we can talk to the people
Totally.
and get explanation.
Yeah. Right?
All right, the next article is Article 11. It's another capital budget supplement. To see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $107,500 for supplemental appropriations for various capital activities as generally described below. The senior center, an additional $100,000 for their siding project, and the Templeton Center Fire Station of $7,500. The senior center was originally appropriated $100,000 for siding. They went out to bid and it came in over that amount. And it went out to rebid. Only one firm has bid, and I think it is about $160,000.
160.
And the question of why 100,000, the town administrator made the point, and I kinda don't like it, but it's neither here nor there. A contingency in case if they go out to bid again, or so they don't have to come back a third time and ask for money. It's,
Right.
to me, it's close to having like a slush fund but
Right, it's like when you're always rounding up.
and I'm not sure where the original 100,000 estimate came from. I wish they would've just asked for like 150 and then got it done for 140 and then said we're under budget, but,
I do remember the discussions on it, and I think it was not so much arbitrary as what money was available. And I think they basically, they transferred, and they said, this is what we're gonna put into it. I think that's the discussion for that first
so.
100,000, I definitely recall.
I just don't understand how it costs so much.
uh,
Or why it's taken so long?
No,
Not only that, but I understand the building's not that big.
no, these are the prefab that they put together.
I wonder if it's also partly the insulation and whatnot. I
Yeah,
know
so
in
if
some
there's more-
places,
If there's more to it, where
Just
they
the
take the
tie that-
existing outside out and then they gotta put insulation and stuff on it.
yeah, maybe, I don't
And I
know.
can see material costs going way up.
Mhm.
Certainly wanna take care of our seniors, but
The specs are online. You can read the specs for the bids for that siding online. I'm not speaking for them, but I'm the chairman of the board of directors for the Council on Aging.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the other things Carter mentioned the other night was some of this additional money was for the clerk of the works for that project.
Say that again?
For the clerk of the works. When I guess when it's over, what, a certain dollar amount, they have to have a,
Yes,
For the works.
and it's like the owner's project manager, when you hit $1 million, you have to do this. And the clerk of the works is actually just somebody who's supposed to oversee the project and look out for, really be the detail, hands-on
Yeah.
Right.
eyes for the town.
I would also like to mention, Mr. Chairman, if I may, that the inside of that building is like the most modern building that we have in this town.
Right.
Amy's been in there.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful. And
It's in Baldenville.
where is it? Oh, you
You
should
just
come
asked where it
visit.
was. You should
should
go
come
see it.
visit. It's on Bridge Street, behind the elderly housing.
oh, okay, I know where it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was constructed from donated buildings from Squibb down at Devon's.
Yep.
And I believe there were 4 of them put together.
Yes,
And,
three of them, I think.
and there was a
but-
lot of volunteer work that went into the creation of the inside too. From town contractors and people that painted, and it's
Okay.
beautiful in there. And
Okay.
I know the building inspector is concerned about if we don't get the siding on it, that there may be mold, and it's not efficiently being heated
Okay.
because that insulation and the siding isn't on
Yeah, it's been open to the weather for several seasons.
Yes, it's
So
been
there is
open,
no
what, 3
current siding
years?
or anything on it?
Most of the
There's like a
building is
little
side,
bit,
but
yeah.
there's
Okay.
parts that are open.
Okay.
And again, they had, I think it was 5 or 6 buildings, and then they took the three that would go together the easiest. And there was a couple of issues with getting stuff lined up, and then the addition they did, and they had to remove some more siding than they thought, and now it's easier to just redo the whole thing than it is to piecemeal the stuff. It's time, labor, money type thing, so it's.
Okay.
And also, it has a beautiful full basement, which is mostly unfinished at this point, and the food pantry, the town food pantry is down there.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the only finished area.
Okay.
So, like I say, it is a lot of money, but if it doesn't get closed in,
Yeah,
whether
we gotta
than
get this done.
the
Okay.
million or so that's been spent
Alright.
already is gonna,
Yeah, I think my only concern is like you, I just hope they have enough. I hope that this
Yeah.
is, like, they need to have it just done. It is a beautiful space, and I think it's
um,
being underused because it's still neglected.
right. And they do have some things there that's not, aimed at seniors. They have
yeah.
a Christmas candy thing that, well, I drop a couple bucks there.
And the veterans meet there
Okay.
once a month.
Okay.
And the fire station thing, I believe, is the same thing, the roof.
Yep.
There's a little bit of water
Yeah,
damage,
they
they
need a
just wanna have
contingency for
people
that
in
as
case
well.
they have, it's one of those things, it is a lot of money and it seems like, but, it's a building and, you do need to take care of them.
That's the thing, we need to take care of what we have,
Yep.
because rebuilding is so expensive too.
Yeah, it's way more expensive.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for the advisory committee to recommend for Article 11 capital budget supplements as written.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none. Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Yes. And thank you for your input and information.
Oh, you're welcome.
Article 12 is more capital budget appropriations. To see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $37,500 for various capital appropriations described below. Fiscal 19 reval is $25,000, and the town common is $12,500. And the money for these appropriations will come from free cash when it is certified, which there is an explanation in that paddock.
Mhm.
Yep.
The town common, I believe, is some of the tree work.
Yep.
The reval is for the assessor's office, and that has to do with town meeting. It was voted, the money was originally gonna come from the light department, but they voted not to fund that. They voted instead to help pay for the paving in front of, on Bridge Street. At town meeting, that was the plan, but there was some communication breakdown somewhere, because the light department voted, like, in March. The assessors, Board of Assessors found out in June that that money, wasn't there. And, it was gonna be for Vision Software, and they're taking that money to
Yep.
pay, I mean, it's just kind of like a web of finance stuff, so this is to fix that.
Yep.
And my understanding from the Board of Assessors, next year, they're not going to depend on like promise or anything, they're gonna just put it in their budget, what they actually need, and ask for it.
This is for a major upgrade. I mean, it's as they explain, as Luann explained, it's vision software and hardware, which is a major upgrade for
Yeah,
them.
and that's the generation of revenue for the town. I mean, they put valuations and, I mean, they create the tax. You pay your tax bill down the hall, but they're the ones that do the evaluation. They go check on, you put a pool in, additions, this, that. I mean, it's,
To me, this is really just backfilling
Yeah.
a promise from the light department
Right,
that they were
it's-
unable to keep for whatever reason, and,
Yes,
and to
it-
to correct
Yeah.
that, so.
yeah, there was a funding source and the funding source didn't happen, so this is to take care of that.
So I'll make a motion that the advisory committee vote in favor of Article 12.
I'll second.
Second, Deb? All right. Have any other further, like I said, this is just a simple. On the motion, Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Yes.
My stomach.
No supper.
I heard that.
Article 13, this is fiscal 19, general fund operating budget supplements. See if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $52,500 for supplemental appropriations to the fiscal year 2019 operating budget as follows. Public Works Highway, $15,000, Fire and EMS, $5,000, the Police, $22,500, the Selectmen, $5,000, the IT Department, $5,000. As the below explanations show, for the highway and the fire, this is to take care of expenses unforeseen, responding to the Stony Bridge road emergency when it flooded. They went down there and tried to pump down Queen Lake. The police is to cover the cost of relocating the police station to and then back when to the Baldwinville Fire Station and when they move back. The selectmen is unanticipated legal claims. This is basically to supplement the amount budgeted for town council expense. And the IT is to cover the unanticipated excess cost of the new Office 360 software. That if I recall correctly from last year's discussion going up to town meeting, that's gonna take, I think about a year total or so. It's just so they can,
For
nobody,
licenses
all
or
departments won't be buying, go
Yeah.
buy a CD or a license. They're just 360 and pay
Yep.
the operating
Yeah.
costs, and I guess it's gonna take a while to get all the departments implemented. And
I don't understand why they.
I don't know how they were off that much on the cost,
Yeah,
but,
right.
that
was my questions. What was the base cost, and then what is $5,000? I mean, the way that Carter explained it as a, contingency, if something goes wrong during that process, it's like,
So is that
what do you
like
need
for tech support?
$5,000?
Is that like for
again, I
tech support?
can't, let's see,
You know,
the expenditure
So-
thing, it's,
I guess
It's
I
not
would
gonna
wonder
have
is
the
for that, did
Right,
they
are they
do
getting the
analysis?
silver or the gold,
Yeah.
that goes along with it?
Right.
Not for that price. But what I wonder is, did anyone, before they decided to go to Office 360, do an evaluation of the computing infrastructure in the town to see if it could even handle it?
No, we couldn't, they have to get all new hardware. I remember, I sat on that presentation last year at,
Okay.
the meetings before town meeting, all the
Okay.
select board meetings. It's a complete overhaul. I just, like Mike, I'm curious, why are we this far off? Why are there not better buffers for emergencies in Public Works, Highway, for things like Stone or Stony Bridge? Because this is an old town. We have infrastructure that is old because, in my opinion, this town has a record of not taking care of what they have. that includes the roads. I mean, we all live on roads that could use a repaving. So I'm just puzzled as to why there isn't better allocation and sort of holding on to that money instead of always looking for something new. Like, nobody ever saves for a rainy day,
Right.
and then,
So this is
then it rains
5,000.
literally.
But
Yeah.
under a balanced budget, you can't really do that. You can't put contingency funds into
Well-
your budget.
There is a contingency fund, it's called the town's reserve fund.
Right,
Uh,
and
it
nobody
is-
puts into that.
It's not, the advisory committee requested last year an amount for fiscal 19 of 80,
Yeah, we got
85,000.
27, right?
And they put, I don't know, 35.
Or
in it,
34,
you know,
whatever it was.
Whatever, in it. We can't justify, we can't. You had $197,000 left over of the free cash that was from 17, that you could have funded that, and
And that could have
that's
gone for
where
this.
that money would come
Right.
from.
So to me, the first three are essentially incurred costs. I think,
Right.
From an accident,
Yeah.
yeah.
right, from something.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, the 5,000 for the selectmen, unanticipated legal claims. Don't they already have a budget for, legal issues? And have they already expended that budget to where they need an additional 5,000?
Again, town
Carter, the
council.
way that Carter described that is that it says, it was really not answering your question, but the way that he described it was that they needed the money because they already had an issue. Like, this was for something that they knew was occurring or had occurred. So
Okay,
rather
we're-
than, like, the IT one is,
Is
if
it clear what
something
their
goes
budget
wrong,
is
we
there
want the
for
money
legal?
available. This was,
Town council, I think, is stuffed in with the selectmen.
Well, and it may not even be a town council issue. I mean,
Maybe Steve knows.
Steve?
Yes, Steve?
Just to answer your question on the computer issues, Sean's been taking an inventory for them, for all the town computers to see if they're powerful enough. Because he's a super computer science major.
Okay.
Alrighty.
The multi-talented young
Yeah.
man.
Have I got an issue for you on our next meeting?
So I would ask in respect to the IT, when they budgeted for moving to 360, did that budget include replacing computing systems, or was that an unknown?
Well, we don't know since everything on the
The,
spreadsheet, so.
the IT budget was $92,000. I think a good chunk of that was for the copy machines.
Right.
And they were trying to go town-wide instead of each department, which
Makes sense.
is smarter
Mhm.
than, than each town department building up their office expense and then buying, and same thing with the 360. I don't know how they were so far off, but,
See, the problem is when they lump it like this
Mm-hmm.
together, the first three you have to pay.
Yeah,
I believe you
Right.
have
I
to
agree, I
pay,
have no issue with that.
and then not really knowing the information
well,
on
you
the
can
selectmen
make
thing.
an amended motion on town meeting floor to only
I
pay,
know. I'm
this
not
much or that much, but.
But I don't like the idea of having, especially this early in the fiscal year, a contingency fund or risk money for the employment of 360. If you haven't even started, how do you know you need $5,000 more? Where did that number come from?
Unanticipated excess costs of deploying software. What is 5K gonna do for you? Like you said,
Well, but what
is
are
it,
the-
is it,
what are the
customer
unexpected
service, is that,
costs? Yeah.
yeah,
Because a lot of times when you buy a product like 360, you buy tech support with it.
right. So why $5,000?
Do they need more licenses?
Unanticipated excess costs of deploying software, I don't know.
think it's just a different way to write miscellaneous.
Agreed.
I agree. So like I said, my problem
irritating.
is, right, my problem is, I firmly believe the first three need to be, if we say no to them, then they're gonna have to come back, we have to pay that anyway.
Right, they have to pay it anyway. Yeah,
So-
no, it's true, like, the road broke, no one anticipated that. We gotta fix
Yeah.
that, we gotta pay for it. We had to move the police station, they needed a new physical plant. I don't know why they didn't remember that they had to move all their stuff, but, and then the recruit to the police academy, of course we should pay that.
Yeah,
It's a great investment, it's an investment for everybody. I'm not necessarily opposed to paying any of it, I just don't understand why at this point, like you're saying, at this point in the fiscal year, why do we need this money now?
Right.
But,
And where are we at, you know, I don't know where we're at with Office 360,
Right.
like how much has been deployed.
well, no one knows.
right, so that's the little dichotomy, is it's the 5,000, is it something that could wait until, annual town meeting? Or where are they at in the process of?
Probably something they're gonna need in that interim period, maybe like a January, February. You don't wanna wait until May.
But they could
You
come
gotta
to
ask
us in the
now.
reserve
Yeah.
fund to get it.
It's not in the reserve fund, cause they didn't put in the recommended amount in the reserve fund.
Well, there's 34,000 in there, so it would cover the 5.
It would, but unless there's other
We
things
went
they
quickly through
want.
this article. Or, I mean, those were the questions that I wrote down. 5K for software deployment contingency.
I
Guess
just
we
feel
should've
like,
asked
I just
Yeah.
feel like
today.
it's purposely being buried in this article.
Interesting.
Because there's 35,750 in the town reserve fund.
Right.
So,
Well, do we wanna have that be our recommendation? That we
That's a-
recommend that
I-
the first
I like- I
four
like-
items get paid, and,
Yeah,
and
I
that
like the
our
way-
recommendation
I like
is
the way that you're
that
headed.
if the last item comes up, that this would be something the town administrator or the board of selectmen would have to
Yeah.
come back
Never heard,
and ask for, right? Who would ask for this again? Would it be the town administrator for the IT?
I would think so.
See, I think,
You mean?
well, they're not gonna have a special
Yeah.
town meeting for just
yeah, they're
that.
not,
Or do they
no,
just go
He
get
would,
it?
no, he would go,
It's either now or the annual town meeting, right?
yeah.
So people can actually offer that information, you know, we can make a recommendation. I mean,
Yeah.
can you do it like that? The
we can
advisory
make a
committee
recommendation
recommends,
for, with a notation of.
I like
you know,
that,
This or that.
I like that
Um,
a lot more than just
We
going.
can make a,
Supplemental.
Someone needs to
recommendation.
stand up and say, yep, this is why it's that much and this is how much we've deployed. Because then everyone that goes to the
And-
meeting will actually have a good visibility
if
to
we
say, oh, this is
recommend-
what's going on in my town, this is how much software they've deployed.
if we recommend, even if we recommend for the article, I mean, if you're at town meeting, you know, it's like, hey, that's what town meeting is supposed to be for. Speak up and ask, say, well, didn't we just vote X amount of dollars back in May? What's the reason for this?
Mhm.
Because anyone on town meeting floor can say, you know,
Yeah,
when you had a line item budget, you could go line item by line item, and it takes longer, but you can say.
well, it's like we're
whole-
stamping our foot on the floor if we're making a different recommendation. We could say the advisory committee recommends for this article, however,
We're just putting our.
we're requesting further information so that voters can make an educated vote that coincides with an IT
What is
expenditure
the,
of $5,000 for software
explanation
deployment.
for, the additional 5,000? What's the unexpected thing? Why does it have to wait?
So what, I don't really, Sean, I don't really wanna put you on the spot, but, are you completed your inventory of the town computing system of what can and can't handle?
No, I've
360?
not completed that yet. I have most of them up.
My point of asking that is, they probably haven't started deploying the 360 software suite yet.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Right. So,
So what are you saying, that the $5,000, like if he found something that could not accept Office 365, they would buy
no,
a
I think they,
replacement?
that's part, I don't know if that's part of the 92,000. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
they should have never come for a budget to deploy that software unless they knew the computing
Yeah.
system, what could. What things they needed to make, so.
Yeah, it's not $1,000, it's $5,000.
Right.
And that's what's kind of sticking out to me.
So then our recommendation could be for this with an explanation for the IT line item.
Right, I mean, if you haven't started deploying
you.
the suite, how do you know 5,000's the right number?
So then my question though would be, how would people then vote for that? Cause they're kinda caught in the same conundrum that we're talking about where,
Right,
They can't,
we're
like,
expecting
it's all
someone to make
bundled
a
together.
motion if it's not one of us. I mean, as the advisory committee, we report, this is what our recommendation is, and then
As a citizen, you can go and make a motion to
Yeah.
make
to
a
like strike
supplement.
out.
someone in
that.
the audience could say, yeah, that does make sense. I want to change that. But we make a recommendation to say to the town, yeah, this makes sense except for this thing.
Okay.
Not only that, the town administrator will be there.
Mm-hmm.
He's not here tonight, but he'll be at that meeting. He can stand up and he might say exactly what everyone needs to hear to make it crystal clear why we need $5,000.
Right.
And even us, we're able to be like, oh, that's great to
Right.
know. Wish we'd known that
Yeah,
before.
because they're not
Yes, we
voting
think
on
you
our
should do it."
recommendation,
Right.
they're voting on the article.
Gotcha.
Right. We're
Okay.
just giving our 2 cents worth in a format for everyone to look at before the meeting starts.
Okay.
So fiscal responsibility wise, $5,000, too much without an explanation. So, Amy, how would that sound? Recommends?
I would like to make a motion, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
to recommend for Article 13 with a request for further explanation of the IT line item. Does that sound right?
Mhm.
Is that enough? Do you need more information for that?
Or without it, we're saying no dice unless you explain it, right? Because it's either yes, yes, you
Well-
can have the money, no, you can't. Yes, you
See-
can have it if you explain it,
Well, I think we
Well-
say yes, and then he's, yes if they explain that.
right?
Right, so if he explains it to everybody's satisfaction, then, you could just get up and say, the advisory committee,
Right.
whatever. Okay, now we
Right.
agree with the explanation, or
And
you
if
have
they,
to, somebody would have to get up as a citizen and make a motion to amend Article 15
Agreed.
to delete the 5,000.
Right.
Now, any one of us could do that, but you'd have to get up from the table and go.
Right.
and yeah, you just have that, and if you plan on doing that, or if you think you might wanna do it, you just write it out
Yeah, it's better to write
beforehand,
it
so you
down.
don't have to write it, I mean, you can write it on anything and
Yeah.
Yeah.
give to the,
And
it
you can have
involves money, so
prepared
it
ahead
has
of
to
time, yeah.
be in
Yeah.
there.
Okay, did we have a second to your motion?
Mm-mm.
So your motion is to recommend for this article, with further information or explanation on the IT line item of $5,000.
Yes.
And we have actually made recommendations for things requesting, either providing, this is stated, or, informing town meeting that, this, and this. So, I mean, this is not out of the ordinary.
Right. And I can see, Derek. I can see Derek having to explain that, to say what the advisory committee has done, has made a recommendation, however, they've called to light something that someone in the audience can actually.
Well, actually, I mean, the advisory committee, a lot of times on articles, given a chance to
To explain
explain
that.
what
Oh,
they're saying.
perfect. That would be even better.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's, so we have a motion, did somebody second?
Tony did.
I'm sorry,
I'd second
Tony, I
it.
didn't.
I'll second it in case I didn't actually, I thought I did, but I wasn't sure.
Okay. But you probably did, I just didn't. 20, 25. Okay, so there'll be a recommend for, with the question or
Yep.
the condition of that. All right. So, on that motion, to recommend for, Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
yes. Okay, Article 14 is the Narragansett Regional School District debt payment. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $417,911 to pay the assessment upon it by the Narragansett Regional School District for the purposes of making payments upon the district's indebtedness. This goes back to annual town meeting, where the debt payment wasn't, that 417 was not included in the original motion.
Really just
That-
correcting an error.
That didn't come about until after the meeting.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I won't
Carter
make that
said he missed
argument. So the school district, after the annual town meeting, they recertified their budget to equal the number that was voted at town meeting to stay out from that 1/12 and keep the state out of the. So this is gonna put this in, and a week ago, yesterday, last Wednesday, the school committee, and we just received the letter this evening. And I've asked for it electronically, so I can send it out to everybody, that they recertified their budget again with the 417 included.
Mm.
Because, you know, why are you gonna vote 400,000 if the school district didn't ask?
Wasn't
for
it, was the number 400 or 425 at, because the number was, in the annual town meeting, the number was published, it just wasn't in the article, and I believe it was, I thought it was 425.
I'll have to look in my book, but it was included in the original budget
Right.
balance, you know, we have,
I think
I don't know,
this is
this
just,
number's made up, 10 million revenue and 10 million expenses. That debt payment was included in it.
right,
It wasn't included in the motion number that was presented and
and this
voted
is the
on.
last payment too.
And they were, before town meeting was over, that came to light.
Yep.
For some reason, they didn't go back and revisit it.
So was
Uh,
it just math? Somebody just didn't carry the right number over,
That-
or it just
Yeah, it just,
inadvertently, it was just
They
a
If you
fatal
look-
mistake?
They left the town to vote it, they left it out of the article, so the town has to agree to appropriate
Right.
the money.
Yes,
It was in the budget, so it's not like we have to come up with $400,000.
Right.
They just forgot to put it in there, so when
Okay.
all was said and done at the annual town meeting, it was like, oops. So
All
I
those
think
other
what they
things,
did
yeah.
was, they took the money to pay the indebtedness out of the ban for the new school, and then this essentially will put it back in.
Yeah.
so. And like I said, the school committee did vote to and that was my question to the selectmen, and
right,
the answer was, we think, yeah, they're probably gonna do that. I don't think they were aware that they had done it, which, like I said, we just got the letter today, and that's required by law to send, when they certify a budget by a school committee vote, they have to send it to the selectmen and to the Finance Advisory Committee. And it wasn't in the box yesterday, it was in there tonight, so they have actually voted for that. And that, like I said, this is, just to fix that. So,
I make a motion that we accept Article 14 in favor.
Second.
motion Tony, second Mike, 2032. Anything further? All right, on Article 14, to recommend for Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
yes,
Deb?
Yes.
Yes. Article 15, a fiscal 19 operating budget transfer. To see if the town will vote to amend the fiscal 19 operating budget by transferring the sum of $25,000 from insurance and benefits to fire EMS, or take any other action. So,
The deficit?
Well,
Or, I mean, I know we wind up incurring, that's our biggest increment, but are they in a deficit?
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to hear explanation, because I thought at the annual town meeting, we put $225,000
I mean, a lot,
into this.
yeah.
And, yeah, so, again, this early in the fiscal year, why is that amount of money needed already?
Yeah, so it says to distribute the override dollars. The override, provided for the police station, right? That's what was on the slideshow from Carter.
How did override money get into that account, though, insurance and benefits? Is that where it went?
I don't think it went, I think he's trying to balance out the fire and EMS.
Yeah,
They routinely take transfers. I mean, if you recall, our end-of-year transfers were out of that account.
Right.
So
right.
I think the TA understands where he can actually move money around, and moving out of there, I think he's explained it as that he's balancing out override numbers. He says override dollars, I think it's just the numbers.
I believe this is another one of those, if we recommend four, it should be with a notation of what is it going to cover under fire EMS? Is it personnel, employee support?
Or debt.
Again, because it doesn't really, is it for salary, is it for?
Yeah.
Miscellaneous?
Yeah. And again, it's barely the first quarter, and,
Override dollars, we did the override for the station. Is the station part of fire and EMS? Or is
You
that
want-
Mm.
construction?
It had it has a whole bunch of numbers, so the total was 470,246, and it was split up between fire and EMS.
and some of it was for the EMS
Oh, right,
full-time
right.
workers.
Okay.
Police, insurance and benefits, highway, snow and ice.
So, I mean, what is he, he's saying that it needs money, so he's transferring it from insurance and benefits to fire and EMS.
Right, and insurance and benefits, we started with 2,381,140, if this report is correct, as of September 13th
Yeah.
this year.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 1,110,762.42 left.
So
And I
three-
believe out of
3 months in.
18, there was 400, how much was there left in insurance?
That was over 500.
No, yes, you're right. I think it was closer to 8 something.
So, I mean,
There was
if
a lot
he's
of money
accounting
left.
for a slightly faster burn rate of their budget, then, okay, I understand that. I don't know what it has to do with the
Got a
override.
3-month SAM.
Right, exactly.
But again, if it's anticipated and it has to only be done with a town meeting, just to play devil's advocate, he may know that this, or they may know that this money's gonna be needed in April.
That's what I'm thinking.
And they can't wait until the town meeting. It'll be one of those things where they'll be at 0
Yeah.
and they're gonna need it.
Like they already did with, Article 13 dealt with fire and EMS,
Yes.
dealing, they
Right.
didn't, they couldn't, account for some of the things that already occurred. I'm thinking it has to do more with burn rate of their budget than it does override.
Right.
It's,
As long as the insurance and benefit can handle the transfer, then, okay,
Well,
I get it.
I think we've seen Nate's pretty much a slush fund.
It's just, it's
Okay, fire and EMS.
getting harder and harder to trust a budget put in front of you now.
Yeah.
It's just so vague.
So, if I look at the fire and EMS budget versus actuals, now this doesn't have September. It doesn't show a negative variance.
No, because we're thinking this is sort of preemptive. Because you need town meeting for this sort of money moving.
The question is just what is this being
Right, what's
used
it
to
for?
cover?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Is this the case, the fire chief not asking for enough money, the town administrator cutting things that shouldn't be cut, or, the biggest question is where is this money going?
right, so I certainly, if between now and April, the fire and EMS need this money, I certainly want to make sure that they have it. We don't want any residents not having services. Again, this is another one I think that needs a little more explanation.
And again, if it's, the town reserve cannot be used for salaries, and it shouldn't be used to supplement bad budgeting, but.
Right.
Is the chief fairly new?
I don't think so. I think he's cut
No, I think he's new. Isn't the fire
To
chief
me, this
fairly new?
just-
Relatively?
What's that?
Isn't the fire chief relatively new?
Yes.
He didn't, do you think that he did the budget from last year?
The budget is really the TA's numbers. I mean, if you look in the book, the department head submits something and then the TA adjusts it and puts it in front of the selectmen, and the selectmen generally go with the TAs. So it's pretty much his
Properly
budget.
distribute override dollars. So if we say, if,
The
we
question
recommend
is,
no.
where is the money?
We recommend no because we're from a standpoint of, hey, budget better, we're recommending no. We're gonna wind up seeing it, if there is a problem, we're gonna wind up seeing it year-end transfers, right?
So, if it's override dollars, what overrides have we voted on in the past X years for fire and EMS?
Recently?
We just did the big
Just
one
that,
in May.
just that
for
last
the-
one.
So,
And that's why I was wondering, why
Right.
isn't it already there?
so it almost sounds like that $225,000 number, or whatever it was,
Wasn't enough.
should have been 250,
Right.
or whatever the right numbers are.
Yeah, it's,
What's the repercussions if we just recommend no? Because we're, the fiscal watchdogs to say, hey, budget better. Yeah, I know it's not as simple as saying that, but
Well, then we
that's,
can recommend no with explanation.
right,
Recommend no with explanation. What's this for? What's the line item?
Yeah.
And then
in our,
on the town meeting floor, could be able to stand up and be like, we get it now. We think that this is
Yeah.
good.
again, they're not voting on our recommendation, they'll listen to us, and they vote however they want to. I have a feeling that the town would vote for it because it's supplementing fire and EMS budget, but from our standpoint, we recommend no because
Lack of
we've already.
information.
Yeah, lack of information, proper budgeting, and, just
it's, like I said, it's, my biggest question is where is it, what is it going to be used for? It's through general terms, it's.
right.
I do think plenty of residents are gonna wonder exactly what we're wondering. What's it for? Didn't we just pass a big override? Didn't we just give the ambulance?
Yeah.
Like, wasn't that the whole point?
So they're talking about operating budget, but also we've got that note there about the override, so what would be their possible answer for that? So they're either gonna have to answer something about the override miscalculation, or, need, or they're going to say our current, you were talking about variance for a moment ago, they're gonna have to say, we anticipate that we're going to need more in our operating budget. Okay,
So I think if we put on our recommendation that if we decide that it's gonna be no, it's because of lack of insight into what's going on with the funds. That a good explanation has not been provided to advisory to make.
There's no explanation on the warrant.
And the other thing is the statement, or take any other actions related thereto. That's very nebulous too.
It's on all of them. I think it must be standard format, because it's literally on every single one.
See, to me, that's like a catch-all statement that, like, well, we're gonna do it for this, or we might do it for this.
But this is the warrant, and I think that it leaves it open to what happens on the floor.
Okay. Oh, okay.
That's just my opinion
You might
of
be right.
reading it.
You might be right.
Yeah, and the override dollars for the first year, they have to go to a specific place or a specific thing. You just can't get an override the first year and then say it's for this and then throw it over there.
Well,
The
but the
following
thing is,
years
but
you
if
can,
the
but-
override was specific to the ambulance or fire and EMS budget, and this is coming out, this is an additional money coming out of the insurance and benefit fund. It's not even part of the override.
Well, I think it was though, cause there's, on the override here, money was put into the insurance and benefits fund. So I think they're just, no, am I
You might be
misreading
right.
what
No,
you're
you could be
saying?
right.
For,
So the total was 470,000.
for the benefit stuff of the,
Hold on a second, Jeff. Go ahead.
No,
Jeff.
sorry, it was the total, it says here, the total was 470,246. It was divided up between fire, EMS, police, insurance and benefits, highway, and snow and ice.
the benefits for the EMS workers that they were supposed to hire,
Okay. That makes more
for
sense.
the four of them. But again, what, it
Like, why are they?
doesn't say where it is going.
So is it, I don't wanna speculate.
I think they're just
I
trying to
was just wondering
redistribute the
if they haven't
funds.
hired those people, is that essentially because we're 3 months into the fiscal year, money they won't spend? So they wanna put it.
No, I guess it could have been allocated a little cleaner then. When you, I know you were
Yeah.
saying, Jeff, that things had to go to a certain location. They could have, at the beginning, put that extra 25,000 right in this budget, if that's where they wanted it, and not put it in insurance. So is it sloppy?
just,
Is it just messy?
Yeah, I wonder.
I just,
I'm just pulling up the YouTube so I can, if I can hear Carter, I think he went through it pretty quickly, but I just wanna check. The trees, what article was the trees? 12, okay, so he's talking about. Here we go.
Transfer of 25,000 from insurance and benefits for fire and EMS. To more properly distribute the override dollars, make sure that all that goes.
Said properly distribute the override dollars, making sure that it all goes to the right places. That's what his explanation was on Monday.
So did maybe they transfer, when they put it in, did they maybe just put too much into, insurance and benefits?
Right, that's what I'm saying, just sloppy.
Yeah, we went over it so quick that I don't know, I'd feel comfortable raising an issue with it, whether we did it as a body or otherwise, to basically recommend no without further explanation.
Yeah, I mean, because me, by saying maybe they, like Amy said, if it was sloppy, that's still just speculation on our part.
Yeah, no, it is, totally. And even just to sort of wave that flag at it,
I
so
agree.
that,
Well, and
it's just spotting a trend for me as well.
I would completely agree with that. I was just gonna say that.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Now, as of today,
How we would word this.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the advisory committee recommends no for Article 15 without sufficient explanation as to the override redistribution.
Can I amend that a little bit?
Yes, you can.
Due to insufficient information?
So
on what-
moved. Yep, so it's insufficient. I amend my motion. So to repeat, I recommend that the advisory committee recommends no to Article 15 unless, well, you said for insufficient
Or
information.
due to insufficient?
Due to insufficient information. And we're just leaving it there, or, Amy, we were
To make
kind of
an,
leaving it open.
to make an informed recommendation to the town.
Yeah, so that's it.
Was there a second?
I'll second that.
Jeff, do you want to read back the motion?
Mike Curry made a motion, seconded by Amy, to recommend against Article 15 for insufficient information, and I wrote on the allocation of the funds.
Allocation of override. Yeah, I mean, that was the best that we understood, is that Carter was trying to rearrange things due to an override. Well, you're doing it from operating budget,
Yeah.
so it's too many different things for us to be able to say, yeah, go ahead.
On articles like this, they should have, as they did on the previous
I
ones,
agree.
numbered explanation
Sure.
below,
Yeah.
and you just avoid,
Well, even
I mean,
on the
you
public.
inform the
yeah,
people.
The public hearing, they didn't, I mean, we were there,
right.
but we didn't, this body didn't address it, so even reviewing the tape.
Right. But on Article 13, they have explanations of each dollar figure, and that's all they need here. And it's, explain to people what you're doing with their money.
Right.
Don't hide it from them, just a simple explanation, just avoid everything. Okay,
So that should prompt the taxpayers to say, hey, yeah, we want to know. And I think we've done our due diligence at that point.
so on Article 15, a motion made and seconded to recommend against this article for the lack of, for insufficient information on the allocation of the override funds. Anything further? Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and yes. Article 16, deposits to the general fund stabilization and OPEB accounts. To see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $322,500, to make deposits into the operations and capital stabilization funds and the OPEB reserve account as follows. In the general fund stabilization fund, $225,000. In the capital stabilization fund, $65,000. In the OPEB fund, $32,500. And that would be met by a transfer from free cash when it is certified.
Okay, so, I mean, if you look on the front, in their planning numbers, they had 202, 57, 28. So they're actually, the numbers have gone up. And I actually sent Jeff an email on this last night. Then I read the town financial management plan, or policy. And they applied it correctly, because I didn't know if they were supposed to take the 35% off the total amount of free cash, but it specifically says after you've taken out the money that you might vote on town meeting that you might need, then you apply that 35 and 10 and 25, whatever the percentages are. So, to me, the numbers added up.
But to your point, though, I think it would be better if they took it off.
Right, because
And
it,
adjusted
because
it.
it leaves a remainder, and I think in this case it was about $190-ish thousand. So if that's the case, then some of this $5,000 for the Office 360, et cetera, could have come out of that.
Yeah,
Um, You gotta eat, brother.
It's horrible.
or it could be transferred into the reserve fund, and if you need it,
Yes.
then just, you
Yeah.
come out and they, okay, we've figured out why we need this extra, we
Right.
need, 6,000 for this, and, do that. And it'd be transferred out.
I just think that, maybe someday, I would love for Carter to come here, and I know he doesn't have a lot of time, but just to sort of explain his management philosophies on funds and stuff. So maybe if we better understood his thinking, it's almost like, okay, well, let's take it from here, here, and here, and I wanna keep this little slush fund. And I don't think that's a way to operate. I mean, I do believe that every budget should have risk money in it. We do sort of have that with the stabilization fund and the operating funds. That's sort of your risk money. However, you don't really want to use that until it gets really up there over a couple million dollars, really.
And that's one of the reasons I voted, I made a case for a town reserve fund of like 85,000. I mean, 30,000 is not, when you have a $15 million budget, it's not
And I think you're showing
enough.
by the free cash, it was well within the budget to do that, because you're really only adding another 40,000-ish.
And like I said, they let 197 roll forward. That was funds that was available, that they could have made the reserve fund a larger number, and then left whatever was over, go, or put it in the capital to buy things.
I mean, I think that the town administrator should have a nominal amount just for those small little things, but not the tens of thousands of dollars things.
And as long as it's in the open, plain, this amount of money, and the reason I'm putting it there is for what you just said, A, B, C, D,
Yep.
small things that come up during the year. And an additional place to come from. It's because other communities, they'll have like 10 stabilization funds to cover this, that, and that,
Yep.
blah, blah. But anyways,
I make a motion that the advisory committee votes in favor of Article 16.
Second.
seconded by Mike.
That's horrible. I wonder if it would show up on the YouTube
Hmm?
sound on the.
Anything further?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
First of all, I never identified myself, I'm sorry. Kathleen King, Baldwinville Road, Baldwinville. One quick question, do you know if free cash has been certified yet?
I
Think it
don't
has.
believe it hasn't been done yet.
If
think
you look
there's-
on the,
They're in the
if you look on the
process.
first page, I don't know if you have this.
They don't.
No.
It pretty much says it hasn't, and there's some math of how it starts at about 1.8 million and ends up being about 1.3 million due to various things. So I think it's still, the number is still kind of a little wishy-washy.
Right, I heard him state an average, that he took an average on Monday night, I think it was 1,350,000.
Right, so they have, what they're doing is, they're
Yes.
using a base amount of
Yes.
1.3 million. If anything, I think it would grow above that based on what we have here. But, so we could have more, and then I think that, then the different funds and stuff would be adjusted.
And does the state have to certify it before our town meeting, or do we just hope that they certify it before the town meeting.
I think it will be. It's like, this is the time of year that they do it. So the document we have in front of us was written October 1st, and it said later this week.
Oh,
So it really should be within the next week or two, well before the town meeting, so that there will be actual, that's the idea, that working numbers on the town meeting floor.
true number.
True numbers, the real deal.
Okay. Anything further?
Nope.
All right, on the motion, Article 16 to recommend for Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Yes. And that is the end of the warrant. Does anyone have any questions or comments on anything covered in the pre-town?
Nope.
If not, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing pre-town meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further? Mike,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and yes. All right, does anybody have any item requests for our next regular meeting? Off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head, no.
So since the next meeting date is the town meeting, are we just gonna push the next one off to the November date?
For now, yes, unless,
I guess maybe unless something comes up at town meeting.
if there is a need, I could just send an email on the available calendar date. We do have that all boards thing, it's supposed to be on the school. The schools originally said it was gonna be on the school budget October 15th,
I think it is.
over at the library.
That's not the impression what I get it's about.
Yeah, I know it started as one thing, and now the impression I get is it's, gonna be something else,
What, the all boards?
yeah.
I think that's gonna be more for all the different town, boards in town to get together and kinda like a big, okay, we're getting ready to do the budget.
Right, and then they're having another one in
budget
like
pep rally?
November, I think.
Yeah.
Another one in like November.
Okay.
Well, if it's
The
the
same
same as
thing, the
last
all
year,
boards?
It's
it's
all boards
basically like,
meeting.
everyone says what they did, like the last one, hey, this is what we did, any issues? Diane Haley Brooks gave she addressed everybody, but it was, they had an agenda.
So. Okay. And the next one will be like a regular date in November, except unless something comes up.
I don't see that other one in November.
Probably the.
Anyone have anything they'd like to say, other than adjourn?
No, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn,
Second.
made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wants to stay?
We wish you well.
Shades are on.
Motion is adjourned.